Hi, I'm Wade Werner, and this is Rigging a Spinning Rod. All right, when I'm rigging up a spinning rod, I'm going to start off by figuring out what technique specific that I'm doing. In this case, I'm getting ready for some bass tournaments coming up, and I'm going to be rigging for finesse fishing, maybe some swim bait fishing, things like that. So what I'm looking for is a good quality sensitive line that is going to give me good feel. I want something, a braid, smaller diameter, that I can change my leader lines for different techniques. I'm going to start by adding backing line and backer to the reel. That's going to allow the braid to bond to the reel without slipping. Put the proper amounts on, adjust to my techniques. I'm going to go with a fluorocarbon leader if I'm using sinking baits, things that I want to keep on the bottom. Fluorocarbon, it has minimal stretch, it's virtually invisible. A lot of great qualities for baits on the bottom. Gives you a lot of sensitivity. If I want to keep a bait up in the water column, I'm going to go with a monofilament leader. That way it's a floating line. It's going to stay on top with my top waters. It's going to keep my suspending baits from sinking. It's going to keep my shallow running baits shallow without dragging into the bottom and snagging everything. So that's where I start figuring out what I need, and then I go through the process of adding it to the rod and reel. So the first thing we're going to do to spool up this spinning reel is we're going to get some backer line. I'm just using some general 12-pound monofilament line, and we got to line this dude up. Nothing more exciting than that. All right, here's how I tie my backing line to the spool. Take the line, I loop it around the spool. I proceed to tie 2 overhand knots and cinch it down to the spool. I then take my tag end and tie 1 single overhand knot in the tag end to create a stopper knot. Trim off the excess line and then proceed to tighten it down to the spool, and it'll slide all the way down and cinch up just like that. All right, once we got our backer line tied to the spool, we're going to start by adding a little bit of backer, probably 20-30 yards, just enough to cover the spool completely and give that braid something to kind of bond into and prevent it from slipping in the future. That right there should be an adequate amount. All right, now that we have our backer line on, we're going to be spooling this up with 15-pound braid. This braid, it's high vis yellow. I like the high vis so I can see if a fish picks that bait up real subtly, starts swimming off with it, I can see that line moving. It doesn't need to be invisible to me. I want to be able to see it. The leader we add in the end is where the invisibility comes from. This also has very, very low stretch. There's virtually zero stretch. You're going to feel everything, every tick, every blade of grass, every stick on the bottom, every little rock. You're going to feel it with this line. So if you don't feel them and don't see them, they're probably not there. All right, now I'm going to take my backer line and tie it to my main line. I do this by tying a uni knot. I'm going to take the backer line and the braid, and I'm going to lay them in opposite directions to one another. I'm going to start with my backer line being a monofilament. It's a little stiffer, a little harder to tie, and I like doing my harder knot first. Take that line, we make a loop, just like this, and then we're going to take the tag end and we're going to pass it back through that loop 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to draw that down. That's going to create half of our double uni knot. Then we're going to switch around and we're going to do the same thing with our braid. And we're going to take that, create a loop, and we're going to run it back through itself. 1, 2, 3, 4 times. And we're going to draw that one down to itself. And then we're going to take our 2 lines and we're going to slowly draw them into one another. And I prefer to pull this slowly so it doesn't burn or cut into each other. I'm going to pull those 2 knots tight to one another. And then we're going to remove the tag ends to finish our knot. There you have it, double uni knot. I'm going to put the line on my little spooling apparatus over here. This guy makes it pretty simple to spool line when I don't have a buddy to hold it for me. All right, let's spool her up. I try to make sure that my spools are filled up fairly close to the top, kind of the inside rim. You don't want to have them overflowing because the first couple of casts they're probably going to spool off there and create a big old bird's nest. That'll frustrate you and it'll kind of ruin your fishing trip. So try to make sure you have enough line to make the reel function properly, not too much. And if you get too little on there, it gets to the point where it just won't cast as far. We also have to accommodate a little bit of room for our leader line that'll be going on here. I'm pretty happy with that. We kept it just inside the inner rim of the reel, or the spool. And that'll have us ready for some leader line. Alright, so we've got our braid on here. We started with a monofilament backer. I prefer to use monofilament, 1 because it's cheaper, and 2 because it has a little stretch and it bonds into a reel, prevents slippage. If you have a little bit of fluorocarbon, you can use that as a backer as well. It works just the same, just a little more expensive line. If you put braid on a spool by itself, it's most likely going to slip and slide on you. It might not do it with a little tiny fish, but you put some heft behind it and you pull on that spool, that whole gobble line is going to spin on there. And it's going to be frustrating. You're going to end up having to take it all back off and put some backer on. So, now that we're ready for it, we're going to take this braid and we're going to attach it to the appropriate leader line. In this case, I'm choosing to use this Seagar. This is a BrazeX fluorocarbon. I prefer this. It's a little more expensive, but this is the link between your lure and the rest of your rig. The BrazeX, it's good around rocks. We got a lot of rocks. We got a lot of trash in the water around here. I'm going to be throwing probably some swim baits and some shaky head type baits, maybe Ned Rigs on this. So I'm using Seagar BrazeX 10-pound test as my leader line. All right, I've got my leader line out. I like to pull off about 20 to 30 feet of leader line. I know this sounds like a lot, but there's a reason for this. The reason is, when I'm fighting a fish and I get it up close to the boat, I don't want to rely on a knot to support that fish out here next to the boat, because that's when things get serious. That's when that fish is scared. They're like, I do not belong in that boat and I want to go the other way. So I want to make sure that that knot makes it all the way onto my spool and wrapped into a few layers of line in that spool when I've got the fish up next to the boat. It's just a good way to prevent heart breakage and losing fish. We're going to use that same double uni knot. I know there's a lot of different knots out there that you all like to use. This one is simple for me and it's effective. Again, we're going to start by running the lines parallel to one another in opposite directions. I'm going to go ahead and do my braid since I already have it run in this direction. We're going to make our loop, run it through 1, 2, 3, 4 times. We're going to cinch that down. And we're going to turn it around. We're going to do the same thing with our fluorocarbon. We're going to wrap this around, and we're going to go through here 1, 2, 3, 4 times. And we're going to cinch this down. And then we're going to draw the two together. Cinch them tight. There's your double uni. I'm going to snip off the tag ends. And we're ready for leader. At this point, I'm not going to reel this onto the spool. I think it's a little easier to guess. I'm 6'4", so my wingspan's about 6 foot. So if I run this out 4 or 5 times, it's going to give us that 25 to 30 foot leader. So there's our leader line. Now I can proceed to draw that up into the spool. Back to our tag end. And this is where we'll tie our lure to. All right, now that we've got our spinning rod rigged up, ready to go, we've got line, we've got backer, we've got braid, we've got leader line. Now we're going to decide what we want to put on it. I've laid out here a few of my favorites that I like to throw. I guess I can kind of walk through them a little bit. One of them would be a Wacky Rig. Right now that bait's kind of coming into its own. Right here is a Bass Reaper double tap in a cherry bomb color. I'm just going to put a little 2-aught wacky hook on there. Just start slinging around in the shallow water. Great bait. Right here we've got an Night Outdoors snack jig with a mean green Striker 4.0 cut down for a trailer. That's a great little finesse option. Especially right now we're getting some cooler weather, and that kind of throws them fish off a little bit. They want a subtle, small, presentation. That's a real good finesse operation right there. Another one would be the classic Ned Rig. This one right here happens to be a Bass Reaper Tap That worm. Brand new worm they just come out with in a blue oyster color. It's a great little bait. It's got real subtle action. You want to keep this thing in contact with the bottom. It's a great bait. Perfect to throw on a spinning rig. And then again, I've got more of a weedless Ned head here, or shaky head type rig. That's with a Striker 4.0 from Torrent Outdoors. This is in the Lazy Gill color. Kind of got this pretty little blue flash on the bottom. That's a great worm. I love that thing. I've been catching a lot of fish this spring on it. That's probably my go-to that we'll put on this rod. And then one more is a swim bait. This is a Bass Reaper Sinister Shad. It's just a little 3.5-inch swim bait with a 3/16 ounce jig head. That'll get down to them schooling fish that are staging to spawn right now. It's just real easy bait to fish. Throw it out there, reel it in slow, fast. Just figure out what the fish are wanting to eat. This is a great option. And then if we would put monofilament leader line on here, one other thing that I like using spinning rods for are small, lightweight top waters, like this Pop-R here. It's doable. You can cast them on a casting rig, but on spinning rods, they're so much easier. You can cast them in the wind. they're just a much more successful trip going out on the water, throwing these little light baits on a spinning rod. That being said, the winner for me on this rig is going to be this Striker 4.0. I'm going to tie that on, get ready to go to the lake and catch some fish. I'm going to put a polymer knot to tie this bait to my line. I use this on all my connection knots, whether it be braid, fluorocarbon, monofilament. I just like this knot. It's simple and effective. Run my line through the eye, loop it back around, and come back through the eye. It's going to create this loop. I'm then going to take the entire loop and do a single overhand knot through itself, just like that. And then the loop we created, we're going to pass the whole entire bait through that loop, come out the other side, and I'm holding my tag end and the main line in my hands right there. And I'm going to slowly draw that down to itself. Now I would typically moisten the line not to damage it, but I didn't think you'd want to see me spit on my line right here. But when you're tying this up yourself, go ahead and moisten that knot, tighten it down. It's a nice small compact knot. It's super tough. It doesn't slip with any kind of line that you throw in it. And then I'm going to take my scissors and nip off that tag end, like so. And now we're ready to go catch the fish. Hey y'all, thanks for watching. Hopefully you're able to learn something new. Please leave me a comment. Give us your feedback, questions, comments, whatever. I like to learn stuff from y'all too. So hopefully this helps you out. Make sure you like and subscribe. We'll see y'all next week.
To stay up to date with all our videos, follow us here. Check out similar videos here.